Good morning, I am WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to The Pugilist, Episode 3, Max. Arthur was on the prowl. It was dark, and he was on the hunt, at the edge of where the theater district gave way to the fens. His black mask and black hoodie and pants, blending in with the dark between the yellow pools of light the streetlights gave. He was looking for junkies, and by the gods would he find them. They would be shown the error of their ways by means of his fists, and then they would be so kind as to inform him who was peddling the destruction of his home, and where he could find said person to have a conversation with them. He had taken down a few junkies and even tracked down and ended the career of a low-level heroin pusher, who ended up waking in a jail cell faced with possession with intent to distribute charges facing him. He had been at this most nights for a week, and he was starting to enjoy the thrill of the hunt. He was enjoying how helpless these stains on society were against him. Part of his mind was worried by these thoughts, but his ego and hubris were keeping that part small and quiet for now. Finally, he found them. Two men shooting something into their veins in an alley. This was his moment to strike, and he rushed towards them. One of the two noticed him quick and pulled out a club. The man rushed back toward Arthur. His club made solid contact with the side of Arthur's head, and for several seconds all Arthur could see was stars. While he was reeling from the most unexpected blow, the other man rushed up, but Arthur's vision cleared enough to block the second club as the first one fell on him again. The first club pelted along his chest, but the new vest he bought was able to spread out the shock enough to leave him relatively unharmed. And then it was Arthur's turn to strike back, and he punched the first junkie in the face. The junkie staggered back several feet and gave Arthur some breathing room to face the other man one-on-one. His skill in one-on-one fights was on full display as he easily knocked the club out of the way as its wielder brought it in for an attack. He punched the man in front of him in the stomach as hard as he could and listened for the wind to leave his body. To say he was mildly surprised when the man grinned at him rather than doubling over and having the wind knocked out of him would be an understatement. However, the apparently unfeeling man couldn't get a hit in with his club. And then his friend rejoined the fight. The first junkie smashed his club into Arthur's chest so hard the club shattered, but between his vest and muscle-tightening techniques he had learned, he was able to take the hit easily. Arthur screamed in rage and drove his fist into the jaw of the still armed man, and this time the junkie felt it as he crumpled to the ground. The first man, now disarmed, seeing how easily his companion fell, and attempted to turn and run. "No, you don't," Arthur growled as he grabbed the back of the man's shirt and pulled him back and put him in a headlock. As he started squeezing, he began to question the man. "What are you taking?" It was almost a full minute of slowly closing in on the man's airways and repeating the question before he finally got an answer. "Max! It's a drug called Max." Dave Smith looked at the growing pile of vanilla folders on his partner's desk and chuckled. "Another case?" Barbara barely looked up as she answered. "Of course. This makes, 5? This pugilistic character is on a spree along the south side of the theater district. Last night involved two guys on this new drug, Max. One was so hopped up he apparently broke his club on this character's chest, to no effect." Dave nodded. "How was this called in?" He was pretty sure he knew the answer already. The second through fourth times were the same. "Payphone," came the mono-word answer. And with that, Dave was proven correct. Whoever this guy was, he was careful. After having a witness the first time, he'd gained a costume, changed to nighttime, and called in his attacks by payphone. Well, at least it was drug users again. Barbara looked up at her partner. As if that makes it any better, he's still hunting down and assaulting people. One of these newest victims is going to be on a liquid diet for the next several months. He was knocked out by a punch to the jaw, which shattered said bone. The other guy follows the end of the fight MO. He happens to be the last one to go down, so he gets questioned and choked until he gives answers. So we should expect whoever's dealing this Max stuff to be a victim in the next few days? That appears to be how the heroin played out. He took a couple of groups of heroin addicts, used their information to find their dealer, and then took them out. Dave was starting to get into this case over the past week. The first incident that had crossed Barbara's desk was a fun distraction at best. Now it was starting to be a big thing. Barbara shrugged. Maybe. If we're seeing the start of a pattern here, that's what we should expect. We have a serial assaulter on our hands right now. I have to wonder how long before he kills and decides he has a taste for it. Dave shrugged back. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I don't think he's like most of the people who come across our desks. I think he's more like Foreshadow, cleaning up the streets one lowlife at a time. Doesn't matter. What he's doing is still illegal. If for no other reason than he's breaking the Moore Act, at bare minimum we have him on that. I never thought I'd hear the great Detective Barbara Kane ever utter those words. The look on his face and the tone of his voice showed that although Detective Smith's words were in slight jest, he was dead serious. Arthur rubbed his eyes. Max was elusive. He had spent the better part of the day combing through various sources he could think of, trying to find out what he could about Max. What he'd found was bare minimum, though. Apparently, Max was new to Freedom City, but had been kicking around Los Angeles for about 10 or 20 years. It was generally considered a designer drug, despite the 2 addicts he had found last night. There were apparently 4 flavors of it. The one he had stumbled on was probably the original that gave boosts to strength, speed, and stamina. Then there were other flavors that targeted one of each of those and gave a large boost to that one, but left the other 2 unaltered. He had an idea of where the dealer was, and he would pay him a visit tonight. And with that finally decided, Arthur got up out of his office chair and set his computer to sleep mode as he staggered down the hall to his bedroom, where he attempted to also set himself in sleep mode. When he woke up, he looked in the mirror and saw the bruise across his face was a nasty yellow color already. He hoped that pesky detective wouldn't be back anytime soon. That bruise would be rather hard to explain away, especially if she had enough suspicion to visit him again. It was fully dark when Arthur reached the alley in the fens. It was a closed-off alley, and with the exception of either end, it was almost pitch black. He used that as he stalked down it, eye on his prey at the end. I hope you break the rule of never sampling from your wares, because you're gonna need it, he threatened as he finally reached near the end. The lone figure laughed. I've been expecting you, ever since 2 of my users got beaten by you last night. I've been waiting. This bravado momentarily caused Arthur to pause before he moved forward again. He charged forward and landed an incredibly hard hit to the man's chest and watched him stumble back a short way. The dealer stood straight and smiled. My turn. And he rushed back toward Arthur and punched, but Arthur blocked his blow rather easily, much to the surprise of the dealer. Arthur could feel extreme amounts of power behind the punch, though. This man was clearly skilled at fighting and was punching as if he was a heavyweight boxer. Unfortunately, Arthur was a heavyweight boxer. This surprise of a man took the next punch with ease and answered it with a punch of his own, and Arthur took it, although it felt like a jackhammer to his side. Arthur quickly decided enough was enough, and gathering all his strength, sent a haymaker to the guy's temple, sacrificing accuracy for power. And that seemed to work. The dealer stumbled back, and before he knew what was going on, Arthur was on top of him, wrestling him to the ground, one hand grabbing the man by the throat. Arthur was able to keep the hold and move to a more advantageous position as his opponent started to struggle. Within about 15 seconds, the dealer was clearly about to pass out. Arthur loosened his grip around the man's neck just enough to allow a slight amount of breathing. Who is your contact in LA? Thank you for listening to episode 3 of The Pugilist. To find out who this dealer's contact is in LA, tune in 2 weeks from now where we reach episode 4, Badger.